All right, good evening, and much to your horror, you may be realizing that you're fixing to do a self-portrait. Um, I'm trying a little different setup in terms of how I place my mirror and my canvas, trying to sit back a little bit farther than I usually do so that I can see, my head in the mirror and my head on the canvas right side by side, more or less, as I'm going along. I asked you last time to tone your canvas, so you can see I've got the burnt sienna that I've rubbed into it, and it's dry. So now I'm ready to start painting. What I would urge you to do is not just work, in terms of overall shape of the head, and then try to go in and put features. By the same token, I wouldn't try to just go eyes, nose, mouth, and then fit a head around it. But try to work in and out as much as you can. Now there is a type of painting that's called sight size, where the canvas is placed right next to the model and the artist actually mixes his colors a ways back. So I'm trying a little experiment here with this sight size idea, like thinking about where I'd want the top of my head here, where I'd want the bottom of it. In doing this, I'm going to end up making my head much smaller than you would think it would actually look when you're looking in the mirror. You think your head's pretty good size, but if you were to actually go and mark it off on the mirror, like where the top of your head is and where the bottom of your head is, you'd really be surprised at how small it is. Okay, so the reflection that you got is much smaller than the way you perceive it to be, the way you think your head is. So keep that in mind as you're doing it. I've got a fairly small canvas here. I think this is an 11 by 14. I'm going in and trying to find place for the eye sockets. And just working, as I said, inside out, not one and then the other, but trying to work inside and then out. My head here is growing a little bit larger than I initially intended, but that's all right. I want to have a little room to work around here. So what's important to start with is that you have an eye socket, as opposed to going in and saying, I want to get really detailed with the shape of an eye and that sort of thing. Let that wait till later, okay? Get a little bit of the goatee, looking for the shape of my face here. You guys are all lucky you've got hair on top of your head and you don't have to deal with a great big round head in your self-portrait. Unless you like the way mine looks so much that you decide to go in and shave your head before you paint. I really honestly hope none of you decide you want to take that approach. But as my grandfather used to say, each man to his own, said the man who kissed the cow. So, I guess that's an old farm expression, since my grandfather was an old farmer. How about that? Trying to find where I want the shoulders to come in. Get a little bit of the lay of the land here, so to speak. Get that cast shadow coming down off the side of the nose. Look at where the upper lip is and how it's darker than the lower lip. Okay. I think that's enough to kind of decide to start to go in and create a solid head. I guess I should give some indication that I have ears. And, you know, your ears, depending on the angle of view that you have, may or may not roughly coincide with like lining up with your eyebrows. The bottom of the ears usually roughly lines up with where the bottom of the nose is. So, you know, where the eyes are placed in the head is usually roughly halfway between the top of the head and the chin. Okay, so, and then your nose is roughly halfway, and then halfway between where your chin would be and the bottom of your nose is where you'd find your mouth. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and squeeze out some more. You know, actually, we've been spending so much time painting shadows first that what I'm going to do, since we're working on a toned canvas, is go in and paint with the lights first. It's just out of habit I started to go with the shadows. Then I realized what we were doing here. I've got some white. I'm starting this painting with just my limited palette, but we did the full color discussion the other day. You can go in and say, all right, I want to go ahead and go with full color, but if you want to just start with a limited palette, that's fine. So see, I've got the forehead, I've got the bridge of the nose comes down, pretty strong light there. You know, my light's very strong directional here. Strong light. There's a strong light under the eye, and then strong light on the cheek. And get some strong light on my neck coming into the throat. I'm just using a little bit of white and the yellow ochre here to start with. And come in and indicate where the ear is there. Okay. I'm going to put a little bit of burnt sienna out so I can start to get some sort of intermediate tones in the flesh. Going to mix that with my white and yellow ochre mixture. So still going to stay fairly light, but just start to model a form here a little bit. See how that comes across just a little bit darker as we're going into the forehead. You never want to have just pure light on one side and pure shadow on the other. I always look to see if I can't see just a little bit of light over on this opposite cheek. So take that guy along there, keep building the nose. Have some strong light right below the lip, right in here. And get a little more of the sienna now to come in. through here. I'm going to use some of that sienna for my lower lip. See, I'm still using a pretty large brush here. I don't want to get bogged down into tiny details from the get-go. I'm going to go in and use some of that sienna to really make, you know, an eye socket here so that I'm pushing that back. If you build a nice strong eye socket first, then you can come in and really do a good job with setting the eyes in there. If you just start by trying to put eyes in and they don't have a socket to sit in or to sit back in, that's where you'll run into some trouble. I'm going to mix just a little bit of blue into my sienna so that I get even a stronger dark now to come over on this opposite side of my face. Bring that shadow maybe a little farther across in the neck because it's being cast down here. Take the ear dark. Okay. Like so. I have to squeeze some more paint out of here quickly. I don't know, it looks like I might need to appear on a wanted poster or something at this point. But what I want you guys to really look for and try to capture is, just like we've been doing with the still lives, a sense of three-dimensionality, volume to the head. Don't get bogged down in features. I found that I thought my painting started to improve greatly when I quit painting faces. And this is going to sound like a really small distinction. When I quit painting faces and I started painting heads, that made all the difference for my paintings. Okay. That's a little too blue. I may be old, but my hair's not blue yet. Okay, just something in kind of a gray that I can start to make work for my mustache and beard. Something like that. Come in with a little bit of that for the hair. Now I'm really able now to concentrate on the head because I have, you know, this middle ground tone in the background that allows me to, you know, work against the middle. And you see how the lights that I've started out with immediately, you know, catch the light in my painting, as opposed to, you know, if I had started with that white canvas like we talked about, and was trying to just spend my time here covering up. There's a strong light on the side of the nose and then into the cheek. Again, I want to try to get a little bit of light over on this opposite cheek. so it's not just all shadow on that side. Keeping the ear pretty light. I want to come up with a much lighter kind of blue-gray for contrast to the face, for, you know, what I'm doing with my mustache there, coming down into the beard. Some strong light here and here. And see, I'm slowly getting rid of all that, you know, kind of underpainting of my toned canvas. But the fact that I had the toned canvas allowed me to really quickly get a sense of volume in the head. I'm going to go in now and mix some ultramarine in with my burnt sienna to really give my eye sockets some drama, if you will. Come down strong on the side of the nose into shadow. Start now to just give a little hint of an indication of the eye. Don't have to get picky yet. Same thing over on this side. Going to reinforce this shadow over here and into the cheek, like so. And then I'm going to reinforce this shadow under my beard onto my neck, like so. I think I need to push this ear back darker. Something like that. Now maybe get a little smaller brush here. And let's put out some more ultramarine to mix with my sienna. The way I showed you about putting two whites out on your palette is a good idea in this approach, to keep your cool and your warm color separate. Okay, I'm using the sienna and the ultramarine to just get a really strong dark that I can kind of go in here and draw with at this point. I'll prop up my hand a little bit. There's a nice dark suggesting the eye. You don't have to be super careful here. And another one for the other side. Okay. I'll come in and start to shape the nostrils a little bit here. Okay. I also want to maybe add a little more sienna to my dark mix to try to come in and shape the mouth like so. I'm going to take even more of the sienna now. make that shadow under the lip really nice and rich over on this side. Take my shadow here, darker. Trying to get a little sense of the shadows under my eyes. Maybe push the dark in here just a little bit farther. Okay. Now let's get some sienna for that kind of crease. Right here. I think that's good. I'm going to take the upper lip just a little bit darker, but don't go and give yourself rosy red lips. Unless, of course, you've got on a fabulous shade of lipstick today. So just a little bit of red there like that. A lot of times inside the ear, you'll see some of that red. This ear in the background is just barely there. I want to get some more of my ultramarine to take and work some shadows in to my beard here. Ladies, I know watching me paint a beard is not going to help your painting too much, but maybe it'll give you a little sense of how you can approach hair. Don't get too involved with trying to like make every last one of them stand out. Alright, now I've got a nice solid three-dimensional head. I'm going to go with my wider brush here. It's very dark in the background in my studio because I don't have any other lights on. So I'm going to take my ultramarine and put a little ochre in it so that I get a little green, which will be a nice contrast to what's going on in the face. And I'm going to start over on this side like so, and you see in doing that, look at how now the light is really coming alive on the face. Bring that same dark over. This ear over here got really wide, so I'm gonna come in and draw him down narrower. Go ahead and take that color out closer to the edges of your canvas. So, the last thing you want to be concerned with when you're starting a portrait like this is getting bogged down in little details. You don't want to be obsessing over painting eyelashes or anything like that. You want to just get a solid three-dimensional head on there. And if you focus on making it solid and three-dimensional, you'll start to get some type of likeness in your painting. Now I would just at this point continue on with the painting, but what I will say is, you know, I've already got a nice solid start on my head, something that I can build on, and something that I can work with. So when you come down into then, say for instance, the shirt, I'm going to go really dark with that, at least, you know, where it's, you know, where the collar is, and then I want to have a strong kind of cast shadow over here onto this shoulder. Like so. I'm not even going to worry hardly about distinguishing what's background and what's foreground at this point. I want to drop this shoulder down just a little bit. I'm going to mix a little white in with my blues to give me a color for where my shirt is in the light. And see, just like that, with this toned canvas, just like that, I've got it covered, and I have a pretty solid three-dimensional head starting to work for me. I always like to stress that I don't think you've started a painting until you've got the painting completely covered. So here I've got it covered. You know, I certainly have work to do, but I've got a solid three-dimensional head that I'm working with now. This is exactly how I want you to start your painting. Start with large, simple shapes. Work inside to outside. Don't get obsessed with details. You know, save that for much, much later in the process. As you go along, you can start adding some details, but your goal should always be a solid volumetric head. Everybody's always worried about, does it look like me? Does it look like me? If you make a good solid head and a good solid painting, the likeness will come. The father of modern art was a painter named Paul Cézanne, and he did dozens of self-portraits over the years. And it's really remarkable because the portraits themselves don't always look like each other, but in the end, all of those portraits looked like him. And it was a really fascinating study when you look at those paintings to see how he aged over the years as well. So see, I'm going to come in and just take that a little bit darker here, have a little stronger cast shadow off the head. And I think that is a pretty nice solid noggin to start with for my demo. maybe I should have said that. My breakthrough came when I started painting noggins as opposed to faces. Big, big, big difference to me. What is a face compared to a head? My eye is a little big. See if I can solve that a little bit here. There, that's getting better in the size. But I think I have a nice solid head now that is something that I can build on. And this is how you start it. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to start it like this, and then I want you to take it as far as you possibly can. Now, I've got a really abrupt kind of shift here from light to shadow. Probably want to model that out a little bit. I didn't have another brush handy, so the finger will do a nice job there. They say that Vermeer actually finished his paintings with his fingers as opposed to continuing to use a brush. But unless we perfect time travel and go back and ask him, we'll probably just always wonder about that, now won't we? All right, so that's your demo for today. Again, take yours as far as you can. Use your limited palette to start with, but then if you want to start getting the color a little brighter, go ahead and use your full range of color. And in doing so, I've often found that for a flesh tone, you use your yellow deep, your red light, and just a little bit of the cerulean blue mixed with white, and you'll end up with a pretty solid flesh tone. That's it for tonight. Have a great week painting. We'll see you guys next Tuesday.